Hey Jay, I am super excited to jump in and talk with you today about all things newsletters. But
Love
before
it.
we get into that, I want to just tell the audience a couple things. So you have this do this, not that podcast. And I will say it's one of the few podcasts that I listen to every single week, but I think I mostly listen to it honestly for the recommendations on TV shows that you're watching and all that good stuff. But I want people to check that out. And I'm going to put the link to that in the show notes. But
Thank you. I
outside of
appreciate
that,
it. Yes.
outside
Yes.
of that, I want to make sure that people know about these events that you have that are coming up.
Yeah.
Now, I have attended guru events for the past
Yeah.
2 years. Like I saw the
Yep.
whole Debbie Gibson thing this year,
Yeah.
the whole 80s kind of get up. That was
Yeah.
fantastic, very entertaining. But you also have one coming up that it's brand new. You mentioned
Brand new.
Eventastic. So I want to make
Yeah.
sure that people are familiar with that. So tell us just a little bit about that before we jump into all the fun stuff here.
Well, first of all, I appreciate you because obviously you have horrible taste in TV, just like I do, but I won't hold that against you. All things reality TV is my world. But in terms of our events, everything we do is free and virtual. So it's for everybody to go to. So we have an event in June called Eventastic, which is going to be the world's largest event about events. So if you put on webinars, in-person events, virtual events, you want to become a better public speaker or get sponsorship sales, Eventastic is going to be wild. And then in November, we got our email conference called Guru Conference, which is about 25,000 marketers will be there. And it's fun, it's crazy, it's free, it's virtual. So thanks for calling that out because we're excited about it.
Yeah, I'm I'm going to be at both of them, just so you know. I'm definitely
Nice.
going to be there.
Good.
But before we jump in and talk about newsletters, I have
Yeah.
to ask you, what is your latest recommendation for a TV show?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm all involved with Love is Blind. I'm in the middle of it. You know, we're in season 8 right now. So I'm very involved with Love is Blind. I'm also very involved with The Bachelor, which nobody else is watching, but I'm still watching The Bachelor, which is a disaster of a season. And then lastly, I got White Lotus going on as well. So I got a lot of TV that I'm trying to consume. It's very, very hard. And by the way, if anybody cares, Grey's Anatomy, their 21st season premiere is right now. I cannot believe they're still putting out new episodes of this ridiculous show. So there's a lot out there.
That's crazy. 20,
I know.
20 something.
24.
That is
Okay, do you
crazy.
know when they started that show, the iPhone did not exist? Taylor Swift had not released an album yet. I mean, that is how long this show's been around. That is weird.
That is weird. So you do
Yeah.
have, I have to say, you do have very bad taste in TV.
I
Love
do.
is
Horrible.
blind. Oh my
Horrible.
gosh, The Bachelor.
Yes.
Now, I love some of the Bravo TV shows. I love
Yes.
Southern Charm. So I'm a
Yes.
big, huge like Charleston fan. It's one of the few that I'm still watching in terms of reality TV. The
You're
other one
holding
I
on.
just finished that I want to tell you about is Landman. And I was in Austin, Texas last week for the Newsletter Marketing Summit, which we were talking
Yeah.
about before we started
Right.
recording. And the Uber driver, when he's taking me back to the airport, he told me, he says, because I just mentioned it, he says, it's exactly like that. So when you watch that TV show, if anybody's listening here, he said, what you see there is exactly how it is. Because he
There it
worked on
is.
one of those oil rigs. So
That's like quality TV. That's legit.
yeah, great. Yeah. Billy Bob
Yes.
Thornton. I mean, he's
Yeah.
awesome.
He's
Right.
out there. He's wild.
All right. I think we need to get a little bit serious
All
here,
right.
maybe
Let's
just
do
a
it.
little bit,
Let's do it.
and jump in. And I want to talk about newsletters because
Yeah.
everybody who is listening here, they either have a newsletter or they want to launch one, or maybe they have one and haven't really been doing kind of, or it's just not working for them.
Right.
So let's talk about, first of all, growing our newsletter, because I know that's one of the things that a lot of us struggle with. So what
Yeah.
would you say to people? What are some of the best ways to grow a newsletter, and what have you seen across the board?
Yeah, a few things. Number one, the easiest thing you should do is everybody should have a pop-up on their website. And a lot of people avoid it for their site because like, oh, I hate pop-ups. They're annoying. I don't like when I go to a site and there's a pop-up that asks me to sign up for something. But that's where you fail because if you have to separate what you like or don't like or whatever, because you're trying to grow your list. And if somebody goes to your website and you don't have a pop-up that has one of those contact captures that says, hey, sign up for this newsletter and we'll give you a special piece of content or a special discount. You grab their email address. If you don't have that, every time somebody goes to your site, then what happens is people go to your website. They check it out, they leave, and you have nothing to show for it. And on average, about 5% of people will fill out that pop-up contact capture, and you're going to be able to grow your database that way. And then the other thing is using social. The only thing about social, and I post on social all the time, the most important thing about social is getting your followers off of social. That is the purpose of you being on social media, right? So what I mean by that is you want to post little tidbits that maybe are about your newsletter or a stat from your newsletter or a tip from your newsletter and say, you want more of this stuff? Sign up here or DM me and I'll drop you the link in DMs to get the registration for it. You need to be intentional on social about getting those registrations because that is the whole purpose of social media.
So great tips there. Let me ask you this. Let's say that maybe we're not getting a lot of traffic to our website or
Right.
social media, with the algorithms, our posts aren't getting out there as much. What are some other ways that you would recommend or that you've seen working for other people?
You have to start to get aggressive and get a little bit comfortable being uncomfortable in terms of growing somewhere. The easiest place to grow is on social media because these audiences are there for you to grab, right? They exist there. Like you said, if they're not coming to your website, they're not just going to magically come to your website. And if you don't have big marketing budgets where you're going to spend all this money to get people to come to your website, then the place that you need to be is social media. And you want to pick a platform and you want to go deep on a platform. The mistake that a lot of people make is they go, okay, I'm going to post this on LinkedIn, on X, on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube. I'm going to be all over the place. And that's what's going to work. That's a recipe for failure. What you want to say to yourself is, okay, I can go deep on one platform. For me, I happen to choose LinkedIn, right? If you're somebody, let's say like Jenna Kutcher or Amy Porterfield, they go deep on Instagram. They're almost never, for example, on LinkedIn. You want to think about your audience. Where are they? Okay. And then you want to go deep there. And then you want to start sharing and growing, commenting on other people's posts, notable people's posts, ongoing, get them to follow you. And then you start to pull them off of social. And so that audience that's built in for you for free on these social networks is the best place to go to start to build up that core group that you need.
And the other thing I would say to folks is maybe even try a little bit of paid advertising, right? If you haven't done it in the past, I'm seeing some really, really good results, even with some very small budgets where people can get, a few hundred leads a week, from the paid advertising on like Facebook and Instagram, especially if your audience is there.
100%.
Yeah. So I want to switch gears just a little bit with you.
Yeah.
I'm doing a webinar next week on newsletters. And, when I send out the email to folks to, get them to add it to their calendar, I tell them to email me back and tell me what is like one of the pain points that you have with newsletters. Well, I got an email back this morning and she said that her pain point was getting people to respond back to her in the kind of the engagement with her newsletter. Any tips that you would have for somebody like that?
Well, first off, we got to get the email opened, right? We have to get the emails open. And so we can go deep on subject lines to get those emails open. There's no doubt about it. But if you want to get people to actually respond, right, the number one thing you could do is get people to give their input on something. I'll give you an example. With my newsletter, I do this about once a quarter. I'll send out an email and the subject line will literally just say the word question. That's it. All right. And they open it up and I say, listen, we're working on the content for next quarter's podcast. And we'd love to hear what is it that you think we should cover? What's on your mind? What's your biggest pain point? And it doesn't have to be, let's say you don't have a podcast. Say, hey, we're working on our topics for our upcoming newsletters. What's on your mind? What's your biggest issue? What do you got going on? Just reply to this message and let us know what you think. Okay. And people love to share their opinions. They love to be able to give their 2 cents. And here's the secret sauce about doing that. Not only do you get back incredibly valuable content ideas, but the trick to email is when you get somebody to actually reply to a message that you've sent, from a technical perspective, you will now stay in that person's inbox pretty much forever. Because what you are telling the receiving and sending email infrastructures is that, yes, I know this sender. Yes, I like this sender because I'm replying to their messages. So doing these campaigns ongoing where you literally all your entire focus is getting that reply will have long-term benefits far beyond just the content information that they're sharing.
That's some really great tips. And, one of the things they mentioned in the newsletter marketing summit last week was like one of the big players, I think it was Morning Brew, but I may have mistaken that. They spend they get responses back every single day, like 200 to 300 responses, and we reply back to all them. So it's giving them all that content of what they can put in future newsletters, but it also is kind of doing that signal that you mentioned there.
100%.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit more about subject lines because you made a good point, right? You got to get the good subject line in there. And I know that you have subjectline.com where people can go in and get feedback on their subject lines because it's so important. Walk us through that. I know in one of the recent podcast episodes that you did, you talked about don't put that personalization in the subject line. That was like from the 1990s. So tell us a little bit more about what you're seeing today in terms of good subject lines.
Yeah, your subject line is so important. And the thing that people don't realize is nobody actually reads the whole subject line. You could literally write Jay likes horrible TV at the end of your subject line. Nobody would see it because what we do is we do our social scroll through our inbox and we're literally looking at the first few characters of the subject line. You may not even realize that's what you do, but that's what we all do. And that's how we're determining whether or not we're going to read a little further in the subject line, whether or not we're going to open up the email. So forget about what you write in the subject line. People are always like, well, how many characters should it be? Should it be less than 50? Who cares? That's irrelevant. What you want to think about is the first few characters. So what should you be doing? So for example, if you start your subject line with a number, an actual number, the 7 things all small business owners need to know. Oh my God, what is it? The 3 pitfalls to avoid. An actual number as the first character of your subject line will lift your email open rates, the percentage of people opening up your email, by about 15%. If you capitalize the entire first word, NEW, all letters are capital, or just in, all letters are capitalized, that also will lift your open rate significantly. Why? Because it stands out just a little bit and gets people to stop that social scroll and look at it, or put something in brackets, right? Let's say you have some sort of new guide. You just write the word guide, you put it in brackets, or you have a big discount, 20% off. You put that in brackets, and that's the start of your subject line. It will crush it. And none of those things, don't listen to anybody that tells you that special characters in your subject line, like brackets or capitalization or emojis or putting the word free or an exclamation mark, is going to cause you to go to the junk folder or the spam folder or the promotions tab. None of that is true. That's not the reason that happens. And content filtering, the words and symbols that you use, it used to be the reason you got filtered. It is not the reason anymore. So I want to liberate everybody to just write what they want to write.
I love that. I love those tips there. Another question, Jay, that I get constantly is how long should my newsletter be? What are you seeing from your customer base and just being out in the industry there?
So one of the things that you should plant in your mind is visually boring, the concept of being visually boring. What do I mean by that? So let's say you get a text from a friend of yours, right? We're on this call right now. You get a text and it's a big block of text. You don't know what it says. You're like, whoa, I can't look. That's a problem. I don't know what it is. I'm going to look at that later. Now, you're only willing to look at that later because it's a friend of yours, right? But what we do is when we send out our newsletters, if we have a big block of text, actually anything over 4 lines in any given block of text, we open it up, it feels like work. It feels visually boring. It doesn't matter if it said I won the lottery, I'm not reading it. So however long your newsletter is, okay, you want to make sure that you're breaking up the content blocks so it's not a turnoff visually right out of the gate. Okay. And then the other thing you want to do is have really good spacing in your newsletter. Big, wonderful headlines that are kind of grabbing somebody, and not boring headlines in each different subsection of your newsletter. So a great headline would be just like a stat. 71% of people are doing this. Oh my goodness, whatever. And then you have that block of text. You want to be a little sensational with each part of your newsletter. And you also don't want to save your best stuff for the bottom. That's another mistake we all make. Like, oh, the best tip I got or the best piece of content, we're going to stick at the bottom to make sure everybody reads. That's not what happens. You got to get your absolute best content right up top, because then people are like, oh, this doesn't stink. I'm going to keep reading. And so that's what you really want to think about. So, of course, shorter is always better, but it's less about how many words or how long it's going to be. It's more about how you lay it out.
I love that. So really having that white space, having the good headlines there, and putting your best stuff at the top. I love that.
Always.
Now, the folks who are listening here today, they're going to be experts, consultants, kind of digital product creators. They might have courses, memberships, and they're looking to monetize, right? Their newsletter and their email marketing in general. So, what would you say what's working best for people like that? Or, is it sponsorships? Is it affiliate marketing? Just selling their own products? What are you seeing? Or maybe it's just a mix of all the above.
I mean, it can be a mix. First of all, you need to have a decent sized audience in order to really monetize a newsletter. What works and what doesn't work, if you're going to have ads or sponsorships in your newsletter, the number one thing you should be doing is endorsement style ads for sure. And it has to be stuff that you believe in. So I have a newsletter, right? And I get hit up a bunch. Hey, I want to sponsor your newsletter. And if it's not a product or service that I have to believe in it, I won't take the sponsorship because the ads that work are the ones where I can write, this is really awesome. This piece of content is amazing. You got to check it out. And I'm not full of it, right? Because then when I tell the people that are reading my newsletter, go and check this thing out, and they do, the next time they read my newsletter, the next time I say, check this thing out, they're like, oh, yeah, that thing Jay said was valuable. I'm going to do that. So you have to have kind of a long-term thought process in your mind about the sponsorships you are willing to take, right? And then the other thing is, I'm not a big fan of selling on CPM. Okay, cost per thousand, meaning, okay, I have 10,000 people in my newsletter, I have 100,000 people in my newsletter. I'm going to charge, $30 per thousand people that are a part of my newsletter. So it's $300, $3,000, whatever it is. I don't like doing that because the dollars are just too small, right? It's impossible to really make any money if you're going to do that. So I believe firmly in a flat rate that you're selling access to this curated audience, that it's not really about exactly how many people there are, but the fact that it's really, really hard to reach these people. And I'm going to do an endorsement style ad for you. This is a big deal. So you want to sell it as a flat rate. So that way you're not kind of like leaving a lot of potential money on the table.
I love that. Love that. So let's just say they were, selling like something they were endorsing. Maybe,
Yeah.
I know you do Marigold in
Yeah.
yours.
Right.
So maybe it's
Right.
something similar for their particular niche, saying
Right.
maybe they do that endorsement for like $300 or 400 or 500,
Right.
depending on how big their email list is.
I
So
also don't like taking one-off deals, quite frankly, because you don't sound like you're being real, right? I like to be able to say, listen, this is going to take a story. It's going to take me a little time. And look, I appreciate the fact you even said that. Like Marigold, for example, that's stuck in your brain because they've been a sponsor of mine for a long time, right? And that's how it works. And that's when the sponsor gets value and you're able to build that connection with whoever you're marketing to. It's another thing to think about that you want at least a multi-insertion buy.
I think that's a really good tip because I probably have made that mistake in the past myself, right? Just doing the one-offs, but I feel like
Yeah,
I could get a lot better results for them had I
100%.
been promoting that particular vendor or, affiliate
Yeah.
partner over a period of time. So along that lines, let's talk about selling in emails. What mistakes are you seeing people make there?
In using emails to just like do
Yeah, to
cold
sell.
emails and
Like
things.
they're a lot of times I get questions from folks. They're like, I'm promoting my offers in my emails, but I'm not getting any sales. What am I doing wrong? And I know that's kind of a loaded question, but are
No,
you
yeah,
seeing like
it's
any
fair.
mistakes people are making there?
Yeah, well, first off, cold email, which is fine. If cold email is your strategy, um, you will fail if all it is cold email. What I mean by that is, let's say all you're doing is saying to your database, I got this product, I got this thing, buy it, download it, it's free, try it, whatever, and you're just doing cold outreach, you will fail. Because the way that email works is this idea, and Gary Vee talks about it all the time for social media, but it works in email. It's this idea of give, and then ask. And you have to think about it that way with thought leadership information, meaning you want to send stuff to your database that is really valuable to them without you asking for anything. Okay, this is a new piece of content I found. It's ungated. It's really cool. I just saw this article. You got to check this out, whatever. And when you're doing these emails, okay, you're not saying, and by the way, buy this for me. By the way, subscribe. By the way, download. No, you're like, I just want to get this in your hands. I think this is really valuable, whatever. And then you do that a few times in a row, like 3 times in a row. And then that fourth email, you go, listen, I love the stuff I've been sending you. I wanted you to check this out because I'm actually doing this really cool thing. And I think it also lines up with what I've been sending you because then the recipient is more like, wait a minute, I'm getting a lot of value from this sender, right? From this company, from this individual. Let me check out what it is they actually do for a living, right? Because it might be of value to me. It's kind of like with my events and my podcast. I put out all this stuff. And then once in a blue moon, I'm like, hey, by the way, I would love to work with you. And then people are very open to it because, oh, great. I get all this value out of this guy. Maybe I should talk to him about what he does for a living. So it's this idea of giving value and then doing the sell as opposed to just pounding away for that sale. That is a recipe for total failure.
I love that. So making sure that we're constantly giving value in our emails, in our content,
Always.
what we're doing there. Before we wrap it up here, Jay, any last minute tips for the audience that related to email marketing that might surprise them a little bit?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple more that I think people don't do enough. Number one, your call to action buttons. You put buttons in your emails, right? You have those rectangular buttons in your emails. The words on the buttons can be a game changer in terms of your response rate. So, for example, let's say you're trying to get somebody to register for a webinar, an event, or something like that. When you send out your promo, is the word on that rectangular button, does it say the word register? Because if it does, that's a fail, right? That's what you want them to do. You always want to frame it in your mind what's in it for the recipient. And when you write your call to action buttons, whether it's for a webinar, a sale, a piece of content, doesn't matter. When you write your call to action buttons in first person, click through rates rise by about 25%. What that means is instead of the word register, it would say save my spot. Instead of register, it might say I want in. And it gets that person just a little bit excited when it's written in that first person. So messing around with the words on your call to action buttons are really valuable. And then the other one I think that people forget about is using a PS in your emails. You, especially any letter format emails, or especially in newsletter emails, you want to add a PS in your emails, and then you want to have a link to whatever your offer is that you are pushing or whatever's going on. Because the way that we consume email is we read the subject line, we read the headline, we skim the body copy, and then we look at the PS. And just by having that PS, which costs you no money, you will see your click-through rates overall rise pretty significantly.
So, Jay, thank you for being here with us today and all the great tips that you gave us related to email marketing and newsletters. Can you let people know where they can find you? And I will make sure that all the links are also in the show notes.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm always on LinkedIn sharing horrible memes and stuff like that. So find me on LinkedIn. My podcast is Do This, Not That for Marketer. For marketers, you should check that out. I appreciate that. And if you really just want to hang out with me at jschwedelson.com, you'll find out all my nonsense there. So this has been super fun. Thanks for including me.
Yeah, thank you, Jay.